It's time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you control the discussion today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Folks, welcome in. Herd Mentality is the plan for today on this Wednesday episode of Locked On Bills. We're going to talk about a lot of different topics today, including some of the offseason decisions that Brandon Beane's going to have to make, yards after catch, Josh Allen's accuracy, offensive line, Javon Solomon, all kinds of stuff here today on this episode. But I want to start with a look to the offseason a little bit. There's been a lot of questions about what the Bills are going to do with all these extensions that they have to hand out. And I like the way that Jeffrey framed this as an opportunity for us to talk about things a little bit. So Jeffrey says, after the salary purge in 2024, it was assumed by some outside observers that the Bills would be players in the free agent market in 2025. Not so fast. There's quite a list of the Bills' own players that they need to keep in 2025. And he mentions Greg Rousseau, Christian Benford, Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard, retain Amari Cooper, et cetera, et cetera. Good thing slot receivers and off-ball linebackers don't break the bank. Let Hamlin keep the seat warm for Bishop and Douglas. We'll see about Kyer Elam in the fourth-year prove-it window. Maybe there's a day one, day two competition brought in. Also need a replacement one tech in the draft or a replacement for Amari Cooper. The work never ends with Brandon Beane keeping the Bills in the Super Bowl window with Josh Allen. Last point, is there any number you could offer or would offer James Cook for a second contract, or do you wait and draft his replacement? All right, let's kind of talk about the offseason dynamics, because I know this is weighing heavily on a lot of people's minds, including mine. Let's start by saying this. I think the highest priority, the number one thing the Bills got to do this offseason is extend Greg Rousseau. And part of that is my belief in who Greg Rousseau is as a player, but also because in 2025, right now, he's scheduled to play on the fifth-year option. The fifth-year option is a hard $13.4 million cap number. If the Bills extend Greg Rousseau, they'll then have the opportunity to spread that $13.4 million out into future years. So not only do you extend a good young player, but you create cap space. So I think that's like step one. Do that, and that'll get you a lot more cap space. We talked to Greg Thompson last week about the salary cap dynamics for the Bills, and it obviously depends a lot on where the salary cap falls. It's been going up. There's gambling money. There's all kinds of new TV money with the Netflix stuff. It feels like the cap's going to continue to go up, and obviously that will dictate a lot of these conversations. But the Bills are going to potentially have some cap space, maybe even around $20 million. So that's good news, certainly compared to where the Bills have been, where they've been over the cap and have to make moves to get cap compliant. Not going to necessarily be as important to do that this year if the cap numbers come in where we expect. So that's step one, the Greg Rousseau piece. Then you have to remember this about this other list of players: Christian Benford, Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard, and James Cook. All important, good players for this team, young developing talent. They're also all signed through 2025. So they're extension eligible after this season. And certainly there should be urgency to get extensions done because, as you know, they only go up, right? These are all good, ascending young players, and those dollar amounts only go up as they continue to build their resume. So it would behoove Brandon Beane to get those done as early as possible. It takes two to tango, right? For Spencer Brown, he said, yeah, I'll take this deal. That looks really good. For maybe Greg Rousseau and Tremaine Edmonds, They probably looked at the situation and said, I think it could go higher, right? So you'd like to get it done as quickly as possible. However, there's the other side of the coin, which is the player's perspective, where they might think, I think if I go and have another big year, I could be in line for even more money. So you have to keep that in mind. Next, you do have these two veterans, Amari Cooper and Rasul Douglas. They're both on the other side of 30. They're veteran free agents. They're important players. But those are decisions that Brandon Beane's going to have to make. And with either player, you can make the case to extend them. You can make the case to let them go. As the Bills continue this youth movement, I lean towards probably letting at least one of them walk, that player being Rasul Douglas, given the position he plays, given the athletic profile. Just kind of a decline feels like it's going to happen with a player like that. And you do have Khalil Elam in his fourth season, and you probably want to give him a great opportunity to start, bring in some meaningful competition, but that feels like a good transition opportunity. With Amari Cooper, who knows what his priorities are? Spot Rack estimates his market to be at about $15 million a season. Boy, I'd like Amari Cooper for 2 years, 30 or something like that, and see if that works out for both sides. Then you also have the DeMar Hamlin conversation. He's a starter for this team. Is he an impact starter? No, but he's certainly serviceable. Obviously, that's going to be rooted in what you think of Cole Bishop and what his development is looking like. And obviously, as a second-round pick, your plan is for him to be a starter. But do you want to go into next year with two new starters in the secondary in Khalil Elam and Cole Bishop? Maybe, but that's on the Bills to assess and figure out where everyone's at and who they need to pay and who needs to be in line for those opportunities. Then you have some role players like a Mac Hollins, like a Ty Johnson, even an Austin Johnson, who are expiring contracts that you want to look at. I think they'd all be modest players to bring back, but there's a few role players to be mindful of. And then there's the James Cook conversation, which is kind of the question that was asked through all of this. And the question is, what type of appetite do I have for a second contract for James Cook? Well, what does a second contract for James Cook look like? I'm guessing that's going to be around $12 million a season. 2023 last year was this big breakout season. He's fourth in the NFL in rushing. He's sixth in the NFL in yards from scrimmage. So far this year, he's third. Literally right now, James Cook is third in the NFL in touchdowns with 11. He's on pace for another productive year from scrimmage, but also the touchdown numbers are certainly there. He turns 26 in September. Certainly a good player, ascending player, but there's always the opportunity cost and replaceability that you have to talk about with running backs. And when we're sitting here talking about one of the bright young corners in the league in Benford, Shakir, and how important he is for this offense, Bernard's a captain, some veterans that feel important. Greg Rousseau's your best defensive lineman. Yeah, I'm going to look at the running back and say, look, if it can't work, that's the guy that you say, oh, well, sorry, just didn't have enough for everyone. That doesn't mean I don't like James Cook or I don't think he's a good player. But when you look at the opportunity cost, what the Bills already have on their plate, the ease of finding running back production, that's the guy you say, well, maybe it won't work. And if it comes in at $8 million a season, okay, well, obviously I have more of an appetite for that. But I don't think that's where it comes in. And I'm certainly not going to bend over backwards to make it work with James Cook. I'm just going to prioritize the other positions that are more meaningful, that are harder to replace. So the offseason, extend Greg Rousseau. I think that comes in at $25 million a season. I think Terrell Bernard comes in at $15 million a season. Benford's $20 million a season. Shakir's probably somewhere between $18 and $25 million a season. Talked about Cooper. He's probably $15 million per. Rasul Douglas is probably a $10 million a year player. You got to find some value in free agency, particularly on the defensive line. That's going to be important. You got to fill in some spots there. But then when it comes to this draft, where the Bills have a first-round pick, 2 2s, bunch of fourth and fifth-round picks, I think you got to find some answers for your defensive line, some young talent that's going to be meaningful. I think you want to find another receiver, especially if you don't bring back Amari Cooper. Probably want some cornerback depth. Potentially want to start investing in a running back to make sure that you have your mix in place beyond this season. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge for Brandon Beane to figure that out, but it's a good spot to be with ascending young players, and you've drafted well and they're developing. And this is These are the problems you want to have. You just got to figure out, got to make those good decisions on who you keep, who you let walk, where those dollar amounts come in, and hope guys don't get injured, because I feel like that was a big part of the last. You kind of had the same dynamic several years ago, and you're paying all these young players, and it all makes sense to pay them, but then they're just getting hurt, right? Like, that was kind of the issue. So hopefully the Bills can have better fortune with the high dollar players that they do choose to extend. All right, spent a lot of time on that. Didn't plan on spending that much time on that, but we got a lot to get to here today. Next up, we'll talk about yards after catch and the run game dynamics. Folks, be sure to stick with me. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you do is pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. They also have this Thanksgiving free square. You got to check this out. Tyreek Hill, Dolphins receiver. They're playing the Packers Thursday night. Tyreek Hill only needs to receive 0.5 receiving yards for that projection to hit. So if you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you're going to win real cash. Prize Picks also, I love this. They put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get money in as quick as 15 minutes. Plus, Prize Picks makes things super easy. They now have Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this season. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Folks, do you struggle to find the perfect gift during the holidays? Maybe gift giving isn't your love language. You overthink it and maybe wind up with something disappointing, or maybe nothing at all. Well, we got the perfect idea, the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame. It's a touchscreen digital photo frame that your whole family will love. You can upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. You add those photos right from your phone, from anywhere. We do this. We have one. It only takes a tap of the phone to send photos to a frame across the country. My mother-in-law has one. We send pictures right to it all the time. It is the fastest and easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop. They'll feel so much more connected to you. And the touchscreen is a game changer. You can swipe through photos. You can tap to see new photos that are sent. And you can tap the heart button to say thank you to the sender. And look, I said it. We have one on the counter in our kitchen. It's beautiful. My wife's particular about the things that are in our house. It looks nice. Photos are displayed in HD resolution, and you can choose from 5 different frame styles. And now, a special limited time offer for our listeners. You can get $20 off your purchase of a skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NFL. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL. All right, folks, let's get back into it. This next one comes from Put Steve Tasker in the Hall of Fame. He says the Bills' yards after catch is up 30% over the Diggs Gabe Davis 4-year average. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on why this is. Well, let's start by unpacking where the numbers actually are. So far this season, 2024, the Bills are averaging 6.89 yards after catch per reception. That's third best in the NFL. Last year, they were 5.31. That's 19th. 2022, 4.59. That's 31st. 2021, 4.5. That's 32nd. Been a major glow up here in yards after catch. Obviously, something we've talked about for several years on this podcast. And folks, it's happening. The Bills are getting yards after the catch. And it really comes down to, I think, 2 things more than anything. First of all, you have legit yards after catch talent. Khalil, Shakir, and Keon Coleman have been monsters. Among 67 NFL receivers with at least 25 receptions in 2024, Khalil Shakir ranks number 1 in yards after the catch per reception at 8.46. Keon Coleman only has 22 catches, but he's at a ridiculous 9.27. So he didn't qualify, but he's actually almost a full yard more than Khalil Shakir. Khalil Shakir is number 1 in the NFL in yards after contact on receptions at 3.25 yards after contact per reception. And again, Keon Coleman, if he had 25 catches, he'd be even higher. He's at 5.27 on 22 catches. Oh, by the way, Khalil Shakir joins DeAndre Hopkins and A.J. Brown as the only 3 receivers in the NFL that don't have a drop and have 25 or more catches. So you got those 2 dudes. Those guys are big parts of the equation. They're very good with the ball in their hands. And then you have an offense that prioritizes it. Defenses over the last 2 years, so this year and last year, have started to play a lot more man coverage against the Bills. In fact, the Bills have faced the highest percentage of man coverage each of the last 2 years by a large clip. And part of the way the Bills' offense is structured is to understand that and put guys in position to get yards after catch. Even Dalton Kincaid, very, very, very good yards after catch tight end. So they got some talent. Defenses are playing them differently. And the offense prioritizes it. And you go back to the Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs years. You're talking about beating zone coverage and the type of routes, a lot of vertical plane routes, a lot of comebacks. They don't really set themselves up well for yards after catch. This offense has a lot more horizontal routes, a lot more screens. Bills are very high in screen percentage, top 5 in the NFL. They're doing things to get yards after catch, and they have the talent to do it. Next one comes from Stephanie. Stephanie says, do you think Josh Allen has been less accurate this year? Kind of seems like that's the case, but I know the eye test isn't totally indicative or indicative. People yell at me because I say indicative. So there it is, indicative. Keep your comments to yourself. Do you have stats compared to other years, or is this the case? Do you know why? Yes, Josh Allen has been less accurate this year. I write about this every single week. If you're part of our Substack, I write several articles per week. One of them is a Josh Allen weekly scouting article where I track 38 different metrics, and I analyze every component of Josh Allen's game on a weekly basis. And we talk about accuracy, and I've been talking about it in there. And Josh Allen's accuracy metrics are absolutely down. So your eyes are not lying to you. It's true. Josh Allen has been less accurate this year than he's been in recent years. His catchable ball rate. And these numbers come courtesy of the Fantasy Points data suite. I stand by it. I know their process. They know ball. They know how to chart. And the catchable ball rate, it doesn't include spikes. It doesn't include throwaways. It means, hey, the quarterback was trying to throw a pass to a receiver for a completion, and was it catchable or not? Josh Allen's catchable ball rate this year is 71.7%. That's towards the bottom of the league in terms of starters, and certainly way less than it's been. 5% dip over 2023 and 2022, where his catchable ball rate was 76.7%, and in 2022 is 76.4%. So, yeah, his accuracy metrics are down, and he's less accurate this year. Why is that the case? I think a big reason why is new weapons, especially earlier in the year when Josh is working the ball down the field to like Mac Hollins and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That wasn't going well, right? Curtis Samuel wasn't going well early on. You know, Khalil Shakir, the only receiver on this team that had caught a pass in a game from Josh Allen prior to this year. So first year with Brady, new weapons, new style of offense. Yeah, I think that contributed. In addition to something that Nate Geary brought up in our conversation on Saturday, just an uptick in man coverage and the style of offense that the Bills are playing to beat it. It's a lot more, or I guess it's a lot less visual for Josh Allen. Against zone coverage, it was, okay, this is the zone. The players available, throw them the ball. Now there's a little bit more of an anticipatory necessity for Josh Allen. And I think there's just some changes in how he has to play, changes in personnel. And I don't think it's drastic enough for us to be worried about it. But yeah, you're not wrong. And it's fine to acknowledge that Josh Allen's not perfect in everything that he does. His accuracy's been down this year. Steven says, I know the offensive line is more about the sum of the parts and not the individual. With that said, who's having the better season, Dion Dawkins or Spencer Brown? Is Dawkins playing at the level he was the past couple of years? Is Brown still ascending, so he's easier to praise? It's hard for me to compare them. Steven, they're both playing at a very high level. The Bills have an outstanding pair of offensive tackles in Dion Dawkins and Spencer Brown. They're playing at a high level. I don't see a significant difference in the level of play, to be honest with you. If anything, Dawkins has absolutely maintained his caliber of play, and Brown continues to improve. Like Brown has taken incremental steps, and it's happened again this year. Like he is really, really coming into his own as a player. So yeah, they're playing at a high level. I think what is skewing or marring a lot of people's perspectives of Dion Dawkins and Spencer Brown is the penalties. They just have had too many penalties this year. And so that's definitely a factor. When you watch them execute blocks, they're terrific. The penalties are maddening. The Bills this year, and I wrote about this in the Substack, pre-snap penalties are way up for the Bills. Offensive pre-snap penalties. Right now in the NFL, they're 9th in pre-snap penalties per snap in the NFL. 0.033 pre-snap penalties per snap. In 2021 and 2022 and 2023, that was all 0.16, 0.18, 0.19. It's been a massive jump. The Bills ranked 25th or lower in the NFL. They're top 10 in frequency this year. And the biggest offender has been Dion Dawkins. Dion Dawkins is 3rd in the NFL with 6 false start penalties, which is crazy because he had 7 false start penalties combined in the previous 4 seasons. Like out of nowhere, Dion Dawkins is a false starter. And then Spencer Brown's right behind him with 5 false starts. No other player on this team has more than 1. That's crazy, right? So I think we feel that and we're like charging it against their performance, and it should be charged against their performance, but it's not necessarily their ability to execute blocks. They're doing that at a high level. They got to get these penalties out of their system. The good news is there's a sample size that's pretty large of them not doing this, and that's got to pick up. I think the reason why, if you watch Dawkins play, he's a really unique player, and the way that he takes his splits, he's right up on the line of scrimmage. He wants to get his hands on players as quickly as possible. And I think because of that, he's wanting to get into a set very quickly, and a little flinch every once in a while, and he's got to get that under control because it's putting the team behind the sticks. So yeah, they got to chill out on those penalties for sure. All right, we got a bunch more to get to, including the Bills' run scheme, Javon Solomon, heartbreaking losses, Milano and the green dot. Folks, be sure to stick with us. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And folks, the live betting is really fun. I've really enjoyed doing that. I love getting in on the props and the lines before the games, but during the games, to be able to go on there and say, okay, I think this player is going to catch a pass on the next drive, or I think the team's going to score a touchdown on the next drive. Whatever it is, you can bet that live. It just makes it a lot more fun. So never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, folks, let's keep it moving here. The next one comes courtesy of Mike. Mike says, the Bills had a ton of success pulling their tackles on run plays last year, but I haven't noticed that at all this year. Am I just missing it, or has it been eliminated from the offense? If it's gone, why do you think that is? If I know they're having success with Cook, running zone, but when you want to be multiple and make defenses prepare for all of it, if you can do it all well, it just doesn't make sense to me to stop using that play that was so successful. Just a head scratcher for me. I know the results are very good, 3rd in EPA per rush, but just head scratching for me. All right, so let's talk about it. First of all, the Bills are extremely multiple with the run scheme, one of the most diverse run schemes in the NFL. That's not a Shanahan offense. And certainly that tackle pull play, so it's tackle wrap or dart is kind of what it's called. That was very much their bread and butter last year. They're just more diverse this year. They sprinkle it in, but they're running more duo, they're running more split zone, they're running more wide zone, they're running more cutback zone, and it's working. So it's part of it's on the menu. It's just not the core run principle that they build everything off of. There's just a lot more that they can do this year. And they're still doing some of that. But I think what has been challenging about the tackle pull plays, which is, they're pulling a backside tackle to the other side of the field. They become a play side blocker. And first of all, that was always a really strange play to see in the NFL. Like, you don't see NFL teams really run that, partly because teams don't have that type of athleticism at tackle, but also if teams can key on it, which they started to do against the Bills like late last year and even at times this year, where if that tackle pulls, these backside defensive ends are just crashing down. And if you don't have a good plan to cut that guy off, they're going to make tackles for loss. And it happened a few times against the Bills. So I think they've been a little bit more selective. They're doing some shorter pulls with the tackles. So instead of them going from right tackle and then pulling all the way off tackle to the other side, they're kind of pulling and getting up into inserting themselves into the blocking surface more in the A gaps or in the B gaps. So it's a little bit different with how they're doing it, which is what you have to do, man. It's the NFL. You just can't copy paste everything that you always do. Teams are good. They figure things out. You got to keep evolving, keep adjusting, keep dressing things up differently so that way you can stick to your principles. But they're still doing it, not as frequently, but they're also just doing other stuff that's working. So it's on the menu, but it's always been a weird play to really lean into, and then you've seen some defensives start to catch up to it, and you have to adjust. Mark says, how is Javon Solomon's development? Could he be the reason the Bills move on from Von as defensive end 2 or 3? Is he progressing to the point that might preclude the Bills from drafting a defensive end early in the spring? We don't have no idea. Javon Solomon's played 43 snaps of defense this season, most of them coming late in blowouts. He does have 30 pass rush snaps on them. He does have 2 sacks and 4 pressures, which is good. You love that. He's playing special teams. He's on the field for 63% of special team snaps, which is 4 phases of special teams. He hasn't been on the field goal unit or the field goal block unit, but he has been on the field goal block unit the last 2 weeks. So he's helping this team on special teams primarily. He did get cooked against Miami, the last Miami game, on a rushing touchdown where he just got washed down the line of scrimmage. So the concern with Javon has kind of been the run defense, and in his most meaningful run defense rep, he got absolutely blasted. I think that he should be in the mix next year for a designated pass rusher role, but Javon Solomon's presence as a mid-day 3 pick precludes 0 offseason moves. 0. The Bills need to find more players on the edge. I'm hoping for early draft picks. I'm hoping for bargain bin free agents. The Bills got to get some more edge talent on this football team, and nothing about Javon Solomon precludes any of that. Now, if he proves himself and earns a role, that's fantastic, and I'm hoping for that. I'm not trying to push him aside, but there's nothing about him as a mid-day 3 pick that is stopping me from investing something early on an edge rusher or investing in free agency. As for this whole Von Miller conversation, let's give you some information. If the Bills cut Von Miller before June 1st, they get $8.5 million in cap savings, but they do get $15.4 million in dead cap space. If they do it after June 1st, they get $17.5 million in 2025 cap savings, but they have $6.3 million in dead cap in 2025. And this doesn't feel really good, $9 million in 2026 for dead cap. You can also keep him. Von's he signed through 2027. Here's the kick in the butt there. He's got a $24 million cap hit next year. So those are your options with Von Miller. We'll see what they do. Rob says, over the last 4 seasons, the Bills have lost to an NFC opponent in heartbreaking fashion. In 2020, it was the Cardinals' Hail Murray. In 2021, it was the Bucs' overtime loss to Tom Brady. In 2022, it was the Vikings' goal line fumble. In 2023, it was the Eagles in overtime. Rob continues to say, but after these losses, the Bills have responded with a combined record of 22-0 to close out the regular season. Knowing our next 3 opponents are NFC teams, who's going to do it, or does history not repeat itself? Rob, what are we doing here, man? We're bringing up all this? Are you kidding? I hear you on this. It's happened. I think it's far more coincidental than anything. I think your stats are interesting that the Bills have gone 22-0 to close out the regular season after those losses. But the Bills have also lost exactly 2 games in December since 2020, and both of those were in 2021. So maybe that's your big stiff arm for this going down. I'm aware of the possibility of heartbreaking losses every single week. That's why I talk about football the way that I do. I respect game scripts. I respect the path that any team has to win any game in the National Football League. And, I mean, the proof is in the games you just mentioned. All of those games happened. We lived through it. But I'm certainly not going to sit here and predict that the Bills are going to have a funky, goofy, heartbreaking loss to any of these upcoming teams. Maybe they'll lose, but maybe it'll just be a normal loss. I don't know. I'm certainly not going to sit here today and predict it. I acknowledge what you're saying, but I'll lean more into that the Bills haven't lost in December over the last 2 years and only twice since 2020, and both of those came in 2021. Patch says, when Matt Milano comes back, will he get the green dot or will Terrell Bernard keep it? What would you do if you were the defensive coordinator? I would keep it with Bernard. One, he's a great communicator, and two, the defense is tuned into his voice. I don't think we have anything to worry about here. Matt Milano has never been the green dot player. He's a weak side linebacker, never been a Mike. I don't think this is even a conversation. So maybe I'm not trying to say that it's not a good question, because I think maybe some people do think this, but Matt Milano has never been the green dot player. I don't think that's going to change. Terrell Bernard's the Mike linebacker. He's a team captain. He's a communicator on the defense. I don't foresee that changing at all. And low-key, I think this is where your concern comes with Balin Spector now on injured reserve. He was your primary backup to Terrell Bernard. So if he goes down, who is it? Can Dorian Williams do it? I have no idea. Is it Joe Andreessen? I don't know what the consequences are here with Balin Spector being out and who that next guy up is to have the green dot. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today. We are back tomorrow. We're doing our normal schedule here on Locked On Bills. Crossover Thursday. I'll talk to Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers for that conversation. But I do want to say real quick, happy Thanksgiving. This will be the Wednesday episode, and the Crossover Thursday will be very much tied up in talking to Eric Crocker. So I wanted to just take this moment right now and say happy Thanksgiving to you. My favorite holiday is Thanksgiving. I mean, what's better than this? Family, food, friends, football, and it's all centered around gratitude. And gratitude's an important part of me and who I am and how I want to raise my family. And I'm a big believer that the most grateful people in the world are the happiest people. So I encourage you to lean into gratitude this time of year and always. And we have a lot to be thankful for. If you're listening to this podcast, you have a lot to be thankful for. And I'm thankful for you. If you listen to this podcast, boy, am I thankful for you. I love that I'm able to do this work. I love the community that's being built around this podcast. I love the Buffalo Bills, and I'll continue to do the best I can to maximize this opportunity to do this work. And I'm grateful for anyone who gives me the time of day to listen, to read, or consume any of the content. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. All right, folks, that's it for today. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.